We're going to build our future with our boots standing on the neck of your past.
Yes, that right there, John, is quite literally this movie to a T. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans of all types. I'm your host, Brian Coddington, joined by my fellow co-host and filmmaker, John Woolscroft.
Man, I cannot wait to talk about Poltergeist. I have been awake for 7 days putting my notes together for Poltergeist. Oh, I'm ready.
We ain't talking about Poltergeist, buddy.
Oh, God damn it.
Oh, no. We're not talking about Poltergeist Rise of the Chicken or where the fuck it is. Didn't we cover that one a long time ago?
I think we talked about, we never did it for a show.
No.
we mentioned it.
We mentioned it a couple times. There was another one we did. Not Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
That was it. Yes, Thanksgiving. How can I forget that one? Check the back catalog. That one's there. That was before our video days. But this is our Halloween episode, folks. Ooh, spooky. Do you notice that there's orange in the color in the background for our video, folks? It's orange and spooky. Ooh.
And I'm pale like a ghost.
And he's pale like a ghost, and I'm pale like every day. Because, yeah, that's that way. But hey, it is our final episode of spooky season. Although for us, honestly, spooky season never ends. You know, we're going to get into like the Thanksgiving days and the Christmas days. And don't worry, we'll pull some, blood and guts horror out for you because that's what we do, right?
Yeah. Trash, irony, humors, and horror. They're always going to be on the docket around here.
Absolutely. And what better way to close out spooky season than by talking about one of the most iconic horror movies and horror franchises, I think, to come out of the 80s from a really well-known filmmaker, like two really well-known filmmakers, if you think about it. But a lot of people think that one really was behind the scenes. Yeah. But we're going to be talking about Poltergeist, and we're going to be talking specifically about Poltergeist. Well, I know I saw 1, 2, and 3. John, did you watch the remake?
I did.
I'm sorry.
I've got some thoughts.
we might go into some thoughts. But yeah, we're going to be talking about Poltergeist, the franchise, today. And boy, oh boy, this is going to be a jam-packed one because there's a lot to unpack with Poltergeist. This is a movie series that, for me, I always thought of as like your first horror movie because, one, it was PG. So like you watching it, you're just like, oh, don't worry, it's not too scary. It's PG.
Before PG-13 was a thing. Yeah.
Before PG-13 was a thing. But yeah, this was like your first horror movie you watched, or it was billed to you as like the first horror movie you could watch. But then you actually like watch the movie and you're just like, oh my fucking God, this is terrifying. Right, John? Didn't you ever find it terrifying the first time you saw it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I think that so many independent horror movie makers get bogged down in what gore can I have, what over the top violence can I have, and you need to first get an audience to care about the people they're seeing and the situations they're seeing in order, in my opinion, for actual fear to exist in that kind. I know, and I hope I'm not ruining half of our listeners turning the show up, but Terrifier to me is just a waste of time because
John, you just ruined half of our audience.
Sorry, folks, not a fan of Art the Clown and Terrifier, but it's mindless violence, and I'm like, to me, that just numbs me. There's nothing scary about that.
Here's the truth. I respect everything that Damien Leone does.
Sure, I mean, good for him.
From a filmmaker's perspective, from an independent filmmaker's perspective, I respect this man so much because he literally was able to birth something akin to a Freddy Krueger on an indie budget that has rivaled what studios had tried to do. I give him credit for that. Do I think his movies are the best example of horror? No, because of the reasons you're bringing up. I appreciate his use of practical effects and really putting a importance of doing that. I love the character of Art the Clown. I'm forgetting the actor who's behind the mask on that, but without that actor, you wouldn't have Art the Clown be as popular as he is. But I think there is something to Terrifier that fans of horror movies like us, who maybe, like me especially, like I love Freddy Krueger, I love, Pinhead, I love my monsters to have personality, and that's what Art the Clown has in spades. Love him or hate him, you can't discount that. But is it gore for gore's sake? Yeah, but Damien Leone knows the type of movie he's making. Yeah. So I got nothing against him. And I got nothing against the fans of Terrifier. And more than likely, we will one day do a Terrifier episode.
Maybe next spooky season.
Well, we were planning, in full transparency, folks, we were planning on doing Terrifier 3, but just with Erie Horror Fest and then just kind of the way everything fell, we really didn't need to do that episode. But if you do want us to do a Terrifier episode, let us know down in the comments. Reach out to us, on social, and reach out to the website at cinemapsychoshow.com. Let us know if you really want us to do that, and we will. But we were planning on doing that, but I do understand what you mean. In Poltergeist, there are moments where we have a break from the horror. And that break from the horror, which you might be like, well, why is there these scenes that are just, Carol Ann getting sad that her bird died and having to bury the bird in a cigar box? Why are there these scenes where the older daughter is giving the middle finger to a bunch of construction workers who are catcalling her?
Remember that shit in the 80s where, at least in the movies, like people you hired to work around your house, you just kind of allowed them to objectify your daughter.
Google your daughter? Yeah, no, I don't remember those days.
It's like in every 80s movie,
Yeah, I guess it was cute. But my point is that just that having those moments do exactly what you're talking about, right? They make you care about what happens to that family. Because the rest of the movie is something trying to take away that family and destroy it. So you have to care.
And, I would say that there's two types of horror franchises, and there are the ones where people will have debates over what's their favorite. Like, oh, I like this Friday the 13th. I like this Nightmare on Elm Street. Where then there are ones like this that it's really a one match show. If I'm putting in wrestling terms, you really
I was waiting for the wrestling term to show up.
It's this is a franchise. I mean, they made 3 films and a remake, but it's really just Poltergeist and the other ones. It's kind of like, even though I very much like the sequels to Psycho, it's Psycho and the other ones. It's so this falls into more of that Psycho realm of one really great movie and a couple of cash ins, as compared to, somebody might be like Nightmare on Elm Street 4 is my favorite, or no way, it's Dream Warriors or what have you.
Yeah, no, Poltergeist, the first one, really sets the bar in terms of what you can do with minimal. You know what I mean? Like Poltergeist absolutely has some really awesome practical effects in there. It has some really awesome optical effects in there, but it's very, very minimal when you compare them to the sequels, which went all in on we're going to show you everything. But it does, in some degree, kind of cheapen the scares, I think.
Yeah. And, it's hard to do this again because it's Freddy has superpowers somehow. He can come back and haunt another set of kids, or Michael Myers can't die, or Jason can't die. They're always coming back to kill a bunch of more teenagers. This film isn't a ghost story. This isn't movie about a family coming together. At its core, and I think a lot of people overlook this, is this is a movie about colonization.
Thank
This is
you.
yeah.
Thank
This is
you
a
for saying that.
right. This is a movie about taking from people. This is about the genocide of the indigenous person of this country. This is about having this country be built on the backs of slaves, of Asian railroad workers. Like when I say we, when you look at the audience, is like white middle class people of the 1980s reading a book about Reagan while they're smoking a doobie.
Oh my
Is
God.
that
There's so much with that fucking scene that I can't wait to talk about, John.
but the we there, they didn't make America, they took it. You know,
I look at, well, first of all, I just want to say I have seen this movie, and I'm talking about this movie. I'm talking about Poltergeist, the first one. I've seen this movie countless times, and I recently rewatched it, like literally watched it yesterday, at the time of this recording for this show. And I don't know what it was about the time I was watching it, but this was a moment where I actually was trying to pay attention to all of the thematic elements that kind of point to exactly what John's talking about. This idea of the monster isn't the ghost. The monster is the sins of the father revisiting themselves on their children. Like, that is what this is. It's what the whole movie's about. It's about American history coming back from the dead to wreak revenge. Okay? That's what this is. And I didn't pay attention to any of this stuff any other time that I had seen it. I'd always heard that, yeah, those elements are there, but I never really saw them for what they were until I watched it again. And there's so many things that just scream out to you. And maybe it is because this is an election year, and maybe this is because I'm just hyper aware of these things because your news is hitting you in the face with this. But there are so many things below the surface with this movie that just you can't believe that, you know, people are just viewing this as simply a ghost story and a haunting, right?
yeah, and I do feel that a lot of, because most horror movies of say the 70s, 80s, and 90s were for reasons, shucks, I can't imagine why, they're predominantly done by white male filmmakers, are about the fears of white people and how you can work upon those. Like, you know, we've talked about Poltergeist and Nightmare on Elm Street. Both of those movies are, what if suburbia was attacked? Because, you know, if you look at our history, America's history, so many people flooded away from the cities when, you know, white people did, when there was more accessibility to minorities, and they said no, we're scared, we don't want this, and we're the only ones that can afford these houses with our you know, GI bills and what have you. We're going to go and seclude ourselves in our little white neighborhoods, our little safe protection area. So what if, you know, what if you violated that idea? And again, you know, I don't know, because this movie's made by Tobe Hooper and, well, really Steven Spielberg. I don't know if it's a commentary on white privilege, but it really is. You know, the Craig T. Nelson character, who's interesting, his last name is almost like Freeman, which I think is a funny use of a last name. Is that
A little weird.
yeah, he gets to be a free man. Is that, you know, you may say that old white chestnut of, well, I didn't own slaves. Yeah, but everything builds on top of something else. And the ability to be living the American dream in these suburban neighborhoods where every house is exactly the same. It's more of the idea of, I made it, you know, I'm the product of white privilege and wealth in this country. That is, you know, that's your part of this process. And, you know, the kids are now too young to have any guilt on them. You know, they haven't lived a life for that to come forward or come forth. But, you know, he may feel that, like, history is not my fault, but, you know, you're gaining off of everything that came before it.
Well, like, the whole premise of the movie is that you want to flee from the quote unquote danger of, I don't know, people who aren't white having the ability at the economic boom that is America, right? That you want that. So you're going to flee. Well, where are you going to flee to? How are you going to build your enclave? Well, you're going to have to take over somewhere else. And that's exactly what happened here. That's exactly what this is you took over somewhere else. This is the whole idea of Western expansion, if you will. The idea of, well, that is decreed by my belief that land is mine, so I must take it, right? And what is the result of it, right? So it's ill-gotten land, it's ill-gotten spoils that reverberate down through the generations, and this is what you get. And like I love how people who will disagree with this, because there will be some, will say, well, the freedlings, like they were hardworking. You don't know they didn't work hard. And it's like, I'm not saying they didn't work hard. This is showing a yuppie culture, which is very prominent in the 1980s, early 80s, and this is what happened, right? You got your ill-gotten gains, you bought into the system rewarded you with a nice house in a planned community that was built over somewhere else. It was built over someone else's house.
Yeah. And over somebody else's existence.
Their life.
Yeah. And, some people might say that I'm looking too political into this, but
I don't care.
But this movie comes out 1 year after Reagan sworn into office, and almost immediately Reagan just did away with all these protections for workers and restrictions on companies.
You have to acknowledge that he was a very consequential president who has caused a lot of problems that have outlived him.
Absolutely. I completely agree. Now, in terms of the movies, I guess you would have to say commentary on technology. Brian, what do you make of the idea that the TV is the vessel for Carol Ann's disappearance? Is this some kind of commentary on, I guess at that time, newest version of technology, unless you really were into computers and had like the Apple II, or was it just that it was something to look visually neat?
Well, I think there's two things. I think one, it looked visually neat, and then also, classic haunted house movies, which if you look at this movie through the realm of a classic haunted house movie, you didn't really have TVs or electronics really being kind of the forefront of this, right? It was mostly like, oh, you heard a spooky voice, or you heard footsteps, or you heard this, or you saw this, or you saw a specter. So the idea of a TV being kind of the portal is relatively new. And I think this might have been one of the first instances of that. But I also think there is some commentary about the idea of the TV being the babysitter at this time. Like, think about it. The TVs are everywhere in this movie. One, we open up with a TV. We see TVs in the kitchen. We see TVs in the living room. There are TVs everywhere. So, I think the idea of the TV being kind of a member of the family, and that member of the family is corrupted by some malevolent force, is relevant in this movie.
Yeah, and I think it also is, even if people know how their TV works in terms of being able to turn it on and grab the clicker and change to NBC to CBS back then, technology can be scary because of its inherent power. I think of a movie like War Games that came out not too long after this movie, and it's about Matthew Broderick using an early 80s computer to accidentally almost start World War III from nuclear weapons from playing a software game, and
it doesn't happen.
Right. Or Richard Pryor in Superman 3, controlling stoplights with a computer that's not connected to internet in any way, shape, or form. But we didn't know to what power these things had. So they're scary, right?
There's even a scene when Dr. Les and I think what the two assistants that she has, they're talking about us. They're the signals, it could be coming from shortwave or longwave radio, or it could be coming from inner space or outer space, or it's like they don't know how the fuck this shit works.
Yeah.
they're ignorant too, and they're the quote unquote scientists. But yeah, I saw it more as what would happen if the babysitter, which let's be honest here, that was it, right? The TV was our babysitter. If it was the thing that got corrupted, the thing that children were around over and over and over every day, that was giving you Mr. Rogers as well as your sports game. What if that thing became corrupted?
Yeah. And the whole fact that, the two neighbors fighting over who's going to get to watch their particular television program.
Well, I do find it funny that like their clickers apparently caused issues, because I don't think the range of those clickers, because those old fashioned clickers, they worked off of like a sound. So like there's no way that sound of the clicker could be heard by that neighbor's TV and vice versa. Like it doesn't work that way.
Like I know all their houses are pretty much the same, but
I get that. But
not that. Yeah,
it's not that close. It's not that close. But I guess John, I kind of want to start with some of these elements, that we talked about. I mean, the movie opens up with the Star Spangled Banner.
Subtle.
It's very subtle. And that's why, like, if you're wondering, like, why are Brian and John not being all joke makers about this movie and being very serious, like, we're giving you what the movie's telling us, man. Like we can't ignore that. But I mean, it opens with the Star Spangled Banner being played. Now, I vaguely remember that being a common thing. I know it was for the longest time. But John, do you remember the Star Spangled Banner playing at the end of the broadcast time?
I'm pretty spoiled in this sense. I don't remember a time in my life that we didn't have cable television. So
same here.
Yeah. So I don't like the networks going off the air and just going to static wasn't something I really experienced. The only time I ever really had static was if I had the channel, like channel 3 for video games, like for Nintendo.
Oh yeah.
And like, if you let that on, it would just go to complete static afterwards.
Or if you went to like the pay-per-view channels, but that was the static you wanted to see.
I think I saw a titty. No, that might have been a lamp. That might have been a really round lamp. I'm not sure.
If I look real close. Oh shit. But yeah, I mean, it opens up with a very, very banal kind of family situation. Dad's passed out in front of the TV in the middle of the night. Mom's asleep in bed. Kids are all in their beds, and a little girl comes over and starts talking to the TV.
Yeah.
And we're off to the races. And then we're introduced to this very idyllic cookie cutter household and cookie cutter neighborhood with Jerry Goldsmith's music in the background. Honestly, his music's so awesome in this. Really solid stuff, because he's able to go from like giving you the idyllic American music for American towns and then showing you terror like you've never seen before. So like, but one of the things that I always thought was funny in this first sequence is when they're showing like how much of a community these people are, is you've got, one of the friends carrying a bunch of beer, and he's riding a BMX. Did you ever get that? Because I never understood that.
Maybe he's got a couple DUIs. If he's the guy that always gets the beer, he's probably drinking a few on the way. Back in the 80s, they called those roadies, where you drink a couple while you're driving. But maybe
why is he riding a BMX? It made no sense to me. I'm like, why are you riding a BMX? And then I love the fact the kids are like, we're going to fuck with this guy, because he's clearly just struggling to hold on to his, giant thing of beer that's has no plastic over it, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, who designed this? Because there's no plastic over the thing to kind of contain it. But he's holding this thing. The beer's like clanking away. Little kids are like, hey, I'm going to get this fucker with these remote control cars. And they cause him to crash and cause all the beer to spill everywhere and start flying out. And he, instead of stopping, runs into the house with a bunch of beer that's going everywhere.
I weeped a little during all that beer spilling. It was brought a tear to my eye. To your point here, when we get introduced to this very cookie cutter family, as you said, we have the ideal nuclear family. And I don't know if your textbooks in like middle school health class said it this way, but they always said the nuclear family was the ideal family.
Oh yeah, they did. They totally did.
That's pretty shady. But yeah,
It's
the idea of
not true.
3 kids, mom and dad, dog, 2 cars in the garage, and chicken on the pot, that kind of thing. So,
and then they had like the extended family, not normal, but extended.
Yeah.
And then there are other families. It's like, why are we categorizing them?
Well, the thing, that I think is interesting is that if you really look at Dominique Dunn's character and Oliver Robin's characters, I can't remember their names off the top of my head. The younger
Dana
boy
and Robbie.
Dana and Robbie, is that they don't really have characters. They're more there as a representation of the American dream, that you have this many kids. I'm not saying that they're completely wallpaper or anything, but it's really the parents, Carol Ann, and Zelda's character when she comes in is interesting as well. But yeah, it's just more, I think, than anything, just pointing out the idea of like the nuclear family was that idea of, this is the American dream and no other dream may exist.
Yeah. Well, it was the idea of, your 2-car garage, your giant home filled with all of your stuff, all of the consumer goods you can imagine, multiple TVs. And yeah, you can always get another house. It's not just, well, you have one house. It's, well, don't worry. You can always, with hard work, get another one, a bigger one that's built off of someone else's graves. Like that. That's the whole thing. Don't worry. We don't want to lose you. We'll just give you a bigger house built on graves. I just have a feeling we're going to lose our entire boomer audience, but that's okay. I'm fine with that. They can hate us.
Well, the movie, the movie.
I'm going off of the movie, though.
Yeah. It has hints of this all over the place. The one scene near the beginning of the movie when there's a bad rainstorm, we cut to the parents and we have a dichotomy because they're rolling a doobie.
I love this so much. I love this scene so much, John.
But Dad's reading a book about Ronald Reagan. So the idea was that whether unfounded or misguided it was, that these are clearly people who, like in the 60s and maybe early 70s, thought, I'm going to change the world, man. We're going to make everything equal and wonderful. It's very much like hippie ideology and mentalities. But eventually, at some point, they sold it all for, a 2-story house. They sold it all for the good job and the pension, but they won't ever admit it to themselves. They still want to hold on to that. We were those people. We're still those people. We just got nice stuff now, and we admire Ronald Reagan. He's he's gonna trickle down the economics to all the people we used to try to help.
Now he's got to protect your stuff.
Yeah,
that's what it all comes down to. Is protecting stuff. It's how much stuff can you accumulate? Bigger stuff, more expensive stuff, electronic stuff, bigger stuff, all the stuff. And this guy right here, he says he's going to protect your stuff. So yeah, you can have your ideals, but like, I could trade you ideals for stuff. So
and you won't admit it to yourself that you sold it. You sold it all.
There's a movie that is one of my favorites from the grad school days of all things. But I watched this movie not too long ago. But it's called SLC Punk. Have you ever seen it?
Yes.
Classic film. There's a scene in which Matthew Lillard, he has a conversation with his dad, and his dad's played by Shooter McGavin of all people. It's not his real name. It's not his real name.
Is
real act. Yeah. I'd call him Shooter, but he talks to him and he's having a conversation about how his dad sold out all his ideals and his dad's this big yuppie, and his Shooter says, he's like, son, I want you to know, I didn't sell out. I bought in.
That
And
chestnut.
that
Yeah.
right there, I'm like, that is the Freelings to a T. They didn't sell out. They bought in. They bought in to the stuff.
Yeah.
There's a scene in this movie where Joe Bell Williams is trying to convince Craig T. Nelson that, hey, this ghost shit's real. And she even says to him, like, remember when we were young and we used to have like open minds? I want you to keep an open mind. So I'm like, this is again screaming to me, you guys are hypocrites. And you sold out and sold out for stuff. But you have to remind yourselves about, how it was to, keep an open mind. This then leads to the discovery of the ghosts, which the way this whole thing happens is kind of bizarro. So they Carol Ann, played by the late Heather O'Rourke, she has kind of a connection to the TV people, as she calls them. And she kind of talks to them through the static. And late one night, the TV people kind of shoot out of the television into the wall, which starts causing all of these weird, kooky ghost things to happen. And it starts out very classic haunted house, which I think that's this movie's way of subduing you into kind of a false sense of security.
Well, it reminds me very much of Die Hard, where if you've never seen Die Hard for the first half of the movie, you do think that these people are terrorists out on a vendetta. You think you're watching like Under Siege again, but then like what makes Die Hard so good is the twisted, like, oh no, they're just criminals. They're just there for bearer bonds. They don't have any beliefs beyond that. And so, yeah, this movie just seems like, oh, it's just a normal haunted house kind of thing. It's like, oh no. Like there's more of a reason. It's not just the ghost just decided to find this house and say, this looks like it's got a nice roomy open concept. Let's haunt here. No, there's a reason.
No, there is a reason. And it's because Heather O'Rourke has a light that confuses the spirits in the house, and they're attracted to her, and they just want to be part of her because she's living. So ultimately, this leads to one of the most terrifying fucking scenes in this whole goddamn movie. And I'm saying that as someone who has children, has a little girl, and upon rewatching this was just like, yeah, this is fucking terrifying as all hell. So let me lay it down for you. All right. So this scene opens up just kind of letting you all know some fucking shit's going to happen by having Craig T. Nelson drive his car home, and it's thunder and lightning in the background. I love this visual because, again, just kind of playing into what we've been talking about, the sins of the father delivering themselves onto the son. Like, you're seeing it visually happen there. And I never realized it until I watched it again. I'm like, wow, that's a striking visual. But it leads with that. This massive storm's coming. There's a creepy fucking tree that we've already been alluded to that Robbie is terrified of. It's out in the window. And sure enough, the tree in the midst of this storm decides to fucking eat Robbie as a distraction. Okay, it's eating the one child to distract everyone else so that Carol Ann's closet, Heather O'Rourke, the actress, her closet can then suck her up into the void. That's all one scene, and it's fucking terrifying. If you have children, it's terrifying.
And I would say for anybody out there, if you're trying to think of things to scare people in a movie, think to what at any point in your life has scared you, because that's organic. Don't just try to think of what's the most abstract thing that I've never seen before, kind of like. The reason I mention that is that Steven Spielberg, as a young boy, had a tree outside of his bedroom that when it would rain, he would see it light up with lightning, and it scared the ever living piss out of him. So this is just him projecting his childhood fears onto screen. So think about what actually scared you and use that, because that's going to be more organic and that's going to work way better than just trying to think of, whoa, what's something fucked up I haven't seen before.
Yeah, no, it's 100% true. But yeah, the tree tries to eat him, which they completely kind of write that one off. Like, I don't know about you, that was kind of weird. Like, no one just said, did the tree really try to eat our kid? Like, really try to eat him?
Well, there's a lot of things in this movie where it's like, okay, these indigenous people sure have like unlimited powers, don't they?
Well,
They
not
can do
just
anything.
that, not just that, but like, did anyone just say like, hey, maybe we can stop for a minute to ask ourselves, did a tree really just try to eat our son? And then a tornado, which, let's be honest here, it's California. There are no tornadoes. As far as I know, there aren't. It's not Tornado Alley. So like, there's a tornado that shows up and sucks up the fucking tree. Okay. But no one's stopping to say like, hey, did the tree really just try to eat her kid? Because immediately after that, they discover Carol Ann's missing. And that's really where it becomes kind of scary. They'd find out that she's not gone. She's inside the TV.
In the walls, yeah.
She's in the walls or in the TV. They don't know where she is, but they can hear her. And this now kind of causes the family to be like frazzled beyond fucking belief. And we actually jump forward in time. Like, that's the thing a lot of people don't get, is like, there is a very noticeable time skip of at least, I'd say, probably a week.
Yeah.
Because that's when Craig T. Nelson first meets Dr. Lesh and her team, and then they're brought in as paranormal investigators to try to, get an idea of what this thing is. So it's like we're introduced to the thing, and now we're investigating the thing.
And didn't you get a sense that they were kind of like the Dr. Bakeman and like Egons and stuff like
100%.
Yeah, they all have degrees in this, but they don't really ever think that like they're actually going to come across anything.
Well, Dr. Lesh even says, she's like, this is all one crazy hobby for me. Like, I do this on my off days. They're brought in, and they're kind of there to just not only necessarily progress the plot along, but just kind of rule out the scientific elements of it, right? You're clearly seeing that, Carol Ann is there, that there are spirits in the house, that the spirits are doing some crazy fucking shit, namely like causing Carol Ann's room like to have all manner of spinny shit just flying around. In probably one of the best displays of rear projection I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Complete rear projection. But
God, I love that scene where they're like, yeah, so any weird shit still happened in the house? He's like, yeah, take a look in here.
well, Craig T. Nelson's just so burnt out, and I love how he's got a beer in hand.
Man, I gotta
just
hand
like,
it to him.
I'm so gone.
I have to really hand it to him. Like, he plays burnt out and emotionally distraught so fucking well.
He really does. He's like, they're like, okay, here's your direction, Craig. Your daughter just disappeared into the TV. On top of that, your tree tried to eat your one kid. and yeah, your wife's a mess. Your daughter is also a mess. She's basically spending all of her time at a friend's house. And yeah, you're left to deal with all of this. How fun.
Yeah.
What do you think you're going to give me there?
Good luck. Yeah.
Good luck. And I love it how the one, it was Ryan, the one like co-investigator. He's like, yeah, I one time saw a Matchbox car move and it took 6 hours. And he was like, 6 hours to do what? Move 6 inches. He's like, oh, okay. Opens the door and all manner of crazy shit. You've got like records that are playing on their own, light bulbs that are lighting up. There's a scene, not a scene, but there's a shot, if you catch this, of the Hulk riding a horse. I had to do a double take. I'm like, wait a minute. Did I just see the Hulk riding a horse? Yes, you did. So it's insane how much crazy shit is happening in that room and how much crazy shit happens when they're there. But yeah, it all kind of leads to this idea that there is actually a portal in the home that there are spirits that have been there for a long time that they don't know who they necessarily are, but they're attracted to Carol Ann's light. And this then leads to meeting Zelda Rubinstein.
Yes.
Tangia, the real Ghostbuster of the movie.
This house has many voices.
Well, I love how Craig T. Nelson's like, I'm answering her with my mind. He's like, dude, are you really at this point in time, after all of the crazy ass shit you've seen, gonna pretend like you're a skeptic?
Yeah, at this point,
I would be completely like, I believe everything you're saying you can do. Okay. One thing I forgot to mention though, now before I leave, we talk about Tangina, the scene with the face being ripped off. John, do you remember that scene?
Yeah. Oh yeah. How could you not? Which I thought was slightly out of place, and also, boy, those effects don't hold up.
Yeah, they
Bless
do.
her heart.
Yeah, they do. Fuck you. I don't care.
It looks a lot. It looks like the Terminator fixing his eye in the first.
It's
Terminator.
What was this? 1982. Yeah,
82.
It was 82.
Yeah.
Okay, give me some credit. I love this scene because I love practical effects. I love gore when it can be thrown in there. And I you get the idea that like this was Tobe Hooper's like sole recommendation to the movie.
Yeah, this is the one time he was allowed to direct. Yeah.
It was just like, hey, Steven, let me do this one, okay? I did Chainsaw. Yeah, I got this.
And he went, okay, little Toby, I'll let you do
Okay,
a little
Toby.
directing in this little movie.
Yeah. But yeah, the one paranormal investigator who decides to raid the Freeling's fridge, which I gotta say, that's kind of presumptive, don't you think?
I mean, after you've seen the shit that's going on there, you're just probably just like, fuck it. I don't care. I'm eating their fried chicken. I don't care.
Okay, but like, here's the thing, John. You and I have been friends for a very, very long time. If you came to my house, I would be okay with you going in my fridge and grabbing something to eat. Okay?
Yeah.
Because we've known each other that long. But if you're a complete fucking stranger, I don't know you at all. The only reason you're in my house is because of manner of creepy ghost shit that's happening in my house. And I'm basically paying you as a contractor, because let's be honest here, Dr. Lesh is getting something. She's not doing it for freezies. It's not a, pro bono ghost, busting. There's no coupons involved. Why would you decide to go into someone's house and just start grabbing all their food?
Like I said, I think they're so freaked out they just don't care about manners anymore.
Yeah, well, come on. I'm like, that guy kind of got what was coming to him.
You know what?
Okay.
Maybe they should have had some like paranormal catering. They didn't have any pizzas or anything.
Let's be honest here. This man grabs a chicken. He grabs a thigh. Okay, he grabs a chicken thigh, puts it right in his mouth, or drumstick. Excuse me. Grabs a chicken drumstick, puts it right in his mouth, and then on top of that, grabs what? A 1-inch thick steak? That's a 1-inch fucking thick. That's an expensive fucking steak.
Yeah, that's a little much. Like, yeah, if he grabs some M&Ms or something,
okay,
that's acceptable.
Yeah, he grabs a 1-inch thick steak, and he's prepared to cook that 1-inch thick steak.
It's the middle of the night, isn't it?
In the middle of the fucking night. He's like, I'm just gonna go make some food. I'm gonna steal all their fucking food. So yeah, you know what? The ghost. They think that was the nasty ghost. That was the bad ghost. No, that was the good ghost saying, hey, we were protecting the family from food thievery.
Yeah.
Oh, but let's talk about Tangina.
All right. Boy, I mean, is it just serendipity that Zelda walks in to audition for this movie? Because like, I can't imagine that they ever like envisioned this character looking like this and that it just happened by luck. I think they just went, oh dear God, we struck gold when Zelda came in for the part,
Oh my God, she absolutely is fantastic in this role.
Yeah.
She absolutely is fantastic. I almost get the vibe that
Yeah.
maybe she was based a little bit off of Lorraine Warren, because around this time period, Lorraine Warren would have looked a bit like the way that Zelda Rubinstein is kind of dressed up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, is that the vibe they were going for?
Yeah, because she would have been around that age, the Lorraine Warren, and then by the 1980s, because they've been doing their con act for like 30 or 40 years at that point. You know.
I love how you're just like, I'm gonna stick the knife in just a little bit. Just a little bit.
I love her character, and she's actually, other than Heather O'Rourke, our Carol Ann, she's the only one that appears in the other two films of the original run of this before the remake happened. So you can tell that, yeah, she's a fan favorite.
Yeah. And she's the one who develops kind of the idea of how to get Carol Ann back. She kind of correctly predicts that there is a portal system, and the way that it works is that it is through the closet and then comes out through the family room. And there's a scene that I'm just like, this is just so wacky that they figured out the mechanics of how this all works. Of they're going to test first if they're going to be able to throw tennis balls into the portal and get them on the other side. Because, nothing could ever get in the way of that. Yeah. So, like, they're testing this out by throwing tennis balls. They come out covered in grape jelly. I don't know why. Ectoplasm.
Oh, because P. Diddy's house was in this portal.
Oh, gross. So gross. You mean that was the inner space, right? That's the space in the spiritual realm where the light's at. It's P. Diddy's house.
You took the tombstones, but you didn't take the freak offs, did you? You didn't take the freak offs. Freak outs. That's it.
Oh my God, it's so gross. Oh, geez. Yeah. No, but either way, they're covered in gross stuff. But while all this is going on, they get the idea that they're gonna Joe Beth Williams is gonna go in, and she's gonna be attached by a rope to go in and grab Carol Ann amidst all the spiritual crap. Okay, that's the idea. Mother's love.
Yeah.
Mother's love. And while this is happening, like, Tangina gets like possessed.
Yeah.
Right? Like, she gets possessed by the dark spirit. Now, it's important to know, because we're going to talk a little bit about the sequels. We don't have a name for that dark spirit. And truth be told, in the sequels, I don't think they had to give it a name.
Well, okay. We'll get there.
But I know we're going to get there, John. So, like, the dark spirit doesn't have a name in this. We just know it's a darker entity amidst all these other spooky spirits. All right. But yeah, Tangina gets kind of possessed, tells Joe Beth Williams and Carol Ann to go into the light, because the light is you go to heaven, you die.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You don't want to do that if you're a living thing.
Or assuming that is even what the light is. Like,
no one knows.
Yeah, it could be something even much worse,
Yeah.
Us God-fearing Christians in America assume that light means Heaven's Gate, but...
I mean, for me, I assume that light is Leviathan, Lord of the Labyrinth.
Oh, yeah. Cthulhu, our one and only Lord. Yeah.
Pinhead and all of his minions will be waiting for you in the light. Yeah. Oh, man, that would be a crossover. I'm sorry. Train of thoughts just out the window today, folks. That would be a hell of a crossover. Poltergeist and Hellraiser in the same universe. But yeah, Tangina gets kind of possessed, and Steven, tries pulling back on the rope, and she kind of snaps out of it, and she goes, "Steven, don't!" And that causes like a weird backlash, and you see this horrifying monster thing, which again, practical fucking effects, man. I know that, John, that you didn't like the face rip-off thing, but man, oh man, I love that. I love that giant monster thing that's like gonna eat your face off. And I wish we had more of that, because I don't think a computer could create that. I really don't.
Yeah. Well, there's human hands involved.
Yeah.
And there's something special about that.
It's tactile. Like, and whether or not you actually could act against that, because I don't know if they did a giant puppet or if they had a miniature or whatever, but like, it's a real thing that's there. And it moves in a way that is unnatural and unsettling, and it's pretty terrifying. Again, a movie that's PG of all things, because again, I know there's no PG-13. If there was, this movie would absolutely be PG-13.
Well, it's really Steven Spielberg's fault we get PG-13, right?
I know.
It's between this and then Temple of Doom and Gremlins, which he produced. It's like, okay, Steven Spielberg's fault. He thought he could get away with anything.
Yeah. But this kind of back and forth thing causes Joe Beth Williams and Carol Ann to come out of the portal. They're covered in pink jello and are revived. And we think that everything is fine after this point.
And it is the end.
And you could, well, here's the thing, a traditional ghost movie, this would be the end.
Yeah.
But it's not. And this right here, the next like 15, 20 minutes of this movie, I think is what really sets it apart. And this is what really drives home the fact that like, this is more of a movie than just a ghost movie, that it really is like hey, there's something deeper here that we're not, that's really trying to get you, that it was not a coincidence, that there is some ill-gotten gain, then this is the revenge of that ill-gotten gain. So like after this, they're all kind of back together. We think the family's great. They were starting the process of moving because it is revealed, and we didn't mention this, it's revealed that the company that Steven works for is the developer of Cuesta Verde, and that Cuesta Verde's entire 4 plans were built on graveyards.
Which here's one thing that I think is very interesting about the twist of this movie is he says, you took the tombstones, but you left the bodies, didn't you? And all I could think is, yeah, okay, that's really shady and stuff, but like digging up corpses to make your houses anyways, like I still think that is really fucking shady and evil anyways. Like even if you didn't just leave the bodies behind and build good affordable housing for white people on top of them.
And it makes sense, right? This scumbag boss of his is penny pinching greedy scumbag. So why is he going to spend the extra bucks to properly move the bodies in a way that was responsible and honor the memory of those dearly departed loved ones, instead of just move the stones, right?
We're gonna care. Yeah. We're gonna build our future with our boots standing on the neck of your past.
Yes.
Yeah.
That right there, John, is quite literally this movie to a T. That is what this movie is about. And this is that past coming back and saying, over my dead body.
Literally.
Quite literally.
Yeah.
And it does happen. I mean, you get some really fucking horrifying scenes in the next 20 minutes of this movie, because it starts off with the clown attacking Robbie, right?
My
Am I
sister,
forgetting something?
Yeah, no, my sister had a clown toy, and after my mom saw this movie, my sister was a baby when this came out.
Yeah.
But she took that clown out of my sister's room, and this movie freaked her out enough that she's like, nope, this is no longer one of Katie's
stories.
Yeah.
But, no, creepy fucking clowns I think that phobia, I think, was developed by this movie and It.
Yeah.
But yeah, the clown attacks Robbie. Then they start like doesn't like the giant hole in the closet like try to open up again.
Yeah, and we get the Jaws shot, but with a hallway instead of her.
Yeah. Joe Beth Williams is running down the hallway with the Jaws shot, where it's like kind of pushing in and pulling out at the
stretching.
Same time. Yeah, and it's very disorienting. And you find out the closet's really trying to eat the children.
Yeah.
Well, in the literal mouth trying to eat the kids.
And one of the scenes that everybody talks about during this whole section of the movie, and I want to dispel a myth here for people, is that the scene in the pool with all the skeletons coming up, because obviously, their graves are being disrupted by the creation of this swimming pool. People go, this movie is cursed because they use real skeletons. I've got bad news for you out there, folks. 90% of the time that you see skeletons on camera, those are real skeletons. This is not unique to Poltergeist. No. Hollywood uses actual cadaver skeletons. So it's not like Spielberg just is a sick fuck and broke from tradition of plastic skeletons. This is a thing that they do.
It is a very horrifying scene. You have literally coffins shooting out from the ground. You've got water pipes breaking. You've got fires and shit going everywhere. And I love how Craig T. Nelson like comes into the frame. He's just like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah.
Like he just went to go drive for a moment and comes back. He's like, what the hell is going on in my house? There's flashing lights and shit.
It's like that thing from like Donald Glover from Community, where he comes in with like the pizzas and then like everything is on fire and everybody's fighting each other.
Yeah. Yeah. But then his boss somehow magically shows up, and that's when he has that insane moment where he says, you moved the stones, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You left the bodies. Why? Why? And it still sticks with me today. I'm like, that's so good.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. Because then the house, kind of starts to crumble in on itself. And you also get this really awesome scream from Dominique Dunn, R.I.P. Seriously, R.I.P. She was tragically murdered by her boyfriend. But she comes in, she's like, what's happening? What's happening? And it's those moments that really sell this movie, because they're just ones you keep going back to over and over again. Those really terrifying moments that sell the terror in this. And her especially, she didn't really have a lot happening in this movie, She's got some moments here and there, but like that right there, it kind of, I think she could have been a scream queen in the 80s.
I think she could have been an anything queen. Yeah, it's just... and a lot of these people, and we will briefly hit on some of the quote unquote cursed movie things. Yeah. Look, people, men killing their significant others because of white male rage is not a curse. It's a feature. It's an unfortunate aspect of what women have to deal with on a daily basis, of not knowing if a guy might just snap and kill them one day. That's just unfortunate thing about life. That's not because, they use real skeletons or, they accidentally conjured the devil. Don't you know? No, it's just reality. And I know that sounds very cynical, but it is.
Yeah. I mean, and to be perfectly honest with you, I think trying to chalk this sort of thing up to the quote unquote curse is kind of a slap in the face of the real tragedies, in my opinion,
of domestic violence, of what women have to deal with in relationships, because they use other examples too of like, they shot this footage using real skeletons and the footage didn't turn out. I'm like, how is that comparable to somebody's life being taken away from them in their prime? Like, it's kind of, it's a gross equivalency.
It's gross.
Yeah.
And I really think it's also it diminishes the horribleness that led to that. It diminishes the abuse, it diminishes all of that, but it says, it's the curse's fault. It's the curse did it. It's not that guy's, fucked up brain or fucked up way of viewing relationships that did it. It's the curse. The curse did it. So like I just, whenever I hear that sort of thing, I don't hear it nearly as much. I heard it more in like the 90s and early 2000s. Nowadays I think it's like no. It's not. But yeah, no, I think that Dominique Dunn could have been a massive star had she lived, and it's really unfortunate. But yeah, the movie ends with the house imploding.
I really wish it had pooped. Just like the water heater, like, just a couple bolts and shit fall out.
Yeah. The house implodes. Cuesta Verde is pretty much on fire. And the Freelings have absconded to a hotel, and it ends with them going to bed and throwing their TV out on the balcony. And at first I thought, like, that's kind of a funny moment because, like, the TV was the portal to the whole thing. But I really start to see kind of the bigger picture of this movie. And I really think that it's them saying we're throwing away the consumerism, the buying in that led us down this path.
Yeah.
That's what I saw it as.
The blind eye. Yeah.
Yes. We're taking responsibility and saying no more. That's what I saw it as. Is the stuff's not worth it. And that's Poltergeist. Now, we mentioned a couple times, and obviously if you listen to this episode, this is a long one, because we haven't yet talked about the sequels. But, this is a movie that the story's by Steven Spielberg, is produced by Steven Spielberg, and Gary Marshall.
Steven Spielberg.
Okay. I want to get to that. But this was actually directed by Tobe Hooper. Now, John, you keep saying this was directed by Steven Spielberg. Why do you say that?
So, just for a little bit of context to your listeners of Psychos Nation, is that while Steven Spielberg was doing prep for E.T., Universal had it in his contract that he wasn't allowed to take on any projects while he was doing pre-production for E.T. So, he kind of, in terms of a director's role, so he was working on Poltergeist because he always kind of wanted to do more of a horrific take on Close Encounters of the Third Kind. There was a story he wanted to do, Night Skies, and eventually it was one of those things that it ended up being, oh, well, what about not aliens? What about ghosts? And and it got turned into basically what Poltergeist became. And so, even though Spielberg, it was kind of his vision and his baby, he couldn't say he was directing it. So the argument is that Tobe Hooper, who had never made a movie on that scale before, was brought in as a patsy director. Now, I think that the truth lies more in that they co-directed the movie. I think under the guise of Spielberg being the producer on the project. But really it should have been said, but it couldn't legally, but it should have said directed by Steven Spielberg and Tobe Hooper. Because I'm not saying that Tobe didn't do it. But you do get mixed answers when you ask certain people, like, Zelda said for the scenes or the days she was there, Spielberg was setting up the shots and directing the actors. But Oliver Robbins, the little boy in the movie, he was like, I only ever got my direction and blocking from Tobe. So I don't think we'll really ever know exactly who was in charge, but I think it was somewhere down the middle, because I think Steven Spielberg realized that he could kind of railroad Tobe Hooper, and Tobe would just go, "Hey, good, just here, just fun to be a part of the show. I'm just here to have fun." So
I think it's more in the middle. I think they both had elements of their own prior work in this. I mean, Tobe Hooper is a man who came from, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, knows how to build suspense and how to build terror. That is also what Steven Spielberg is known for doing with movies like Jaws. So in Close Encounters of the Third Kind, there are some scary moments in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Not to the extent of Poltergeist, obviously, but like they're there. So I think that they were both contemporaries. Do you know or not if they were friends prior to actually working together?
I don't think so. Maybe they were at a cocktail party or two together, but I don't think they really knew each other all that much.
They weren't like George Lucas and Steven Spielberg.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But I think that they were contemporaries. They knew each other's work. And I also think it's another thing, too, that Steven Spielberg, he was known for a certain kind of movie at this point in time. Okay? He was known for not the Poltergeist style movie. So having someone like Tobe Hooper, and this is from a purely marketing standpoint, right?
Yeah.
If I am known as the wholesome filmmaker guy, well, how is that going to work if I'm trying to sell my scary family haunting movie?
Yeah.
It's not really going to work. So, but if I have someone like Tobe Hooper, who is known for making one of the scariest movies out there, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, if he's out front, then it becomes something we could sell on. Kind of like how The Elephant Man was actually produced by Mel Brooks, but Mel Brooks didn't want people to know that because they're like, well, Mel Brooks is Mr. Comedy Guy. He's the producers. I'm not going to go watch a movie that's made by him because it's going to be funny. When you actually watch, you're like, no, this is actually a drama.
The Fly as well. I think that word had gotten out that Mel Brooks on a sidebar here had produced The Fly, and everybody, like, there were so many people coming in thinking they were getting a Mel Brooks movie, and boy, were they disappointed.
But that's what I'm saying is that, the choice of the director, that also becomes a marketing thing too. And that is something that you can sell a movie on. And this was a time period where the director was something you would sell the movie on, right? Steven Spielberg's Jaws, George Lucas's Star Wars. So Tobe Hooper, director of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, brings you Poltergeist. I can see that being a thing from, again, a marketing standpoint of, hey, yes, this gets me out of a jam where I can't say I'm directing it, but now I can kind of have my cake and eat it too. I do think that they were more co-directors, if anything.
Yeah. Like I said, I agree with that. Yeah, I would say in a different world of contract bullshit, I think it would say it was directed by both of them.
Yeah. If this was a modern film, I don't think. I think it would be kind of like when you had like Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez, like co-directed. Like they would do that sort of deal.
Yeah.
But
it reminds me very much like if you're telling me for 1 second that George Lucas didn't direct in any way, shape, or form parts of Empire or Jedi, I think you're out of your mind.
Absolutely.
He was there on set all the time. I'm sure he went, oh, I got an idea. And Irvin Kershner was like, yeah, sure, George, just go ahead.
Just you're paying the bill. So before we get to our next batch of films we're going to talk about, which is Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3 and the remake, I do want to go through a couple different reviews of this movie. I have some reviews, some Letterboxd reviews, okay? Now, John, you have not seen any of these, right?
I have not, no.
You have not, okay? So let's go ahead and take a look at these. Now, these are not terrible ones, but let's just kind of take a look.
I wondered if you'd found any 1 stars.
I'm not trying to. It's a good movie, so it's kind of hard to find a terrible one. But let's go ahead and take a look at this first one. So this first one is no sympathy for this family. Buy the ghost insurance next time.
Good one.
Yeah, I mean,
who's back there writing those singers? Is that you, Bruce Blanche?
That should be something that Progressive should offer. Ghost insurance.
Yeah. Oh my God. Like anybody that has like a rock or gem collection, be like, you need some ghost insurance.
Can you imagine Flo popping into a Progressive commercial saying, "So, do you have ectoplasm coming down your walls? Is blood coming out of your eyeballs? Have you tried eating chicken and found it's filled with maggots? Well, Progressive can help you by giving you ghost insurance
to believe you."
Yeah, Progressive, come on, get on the ghost insurance wagon. It's going to be something that's really popular, I'm telling you. All right, so review number 2. What a classic. The pool scene at the end fucked me up for a long time. I'd forgotten about that guy pulling his face off in the mirror. That's a big yikes for me. Well, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I mean, of the effects in the film, I would say, as you mentioned, the demon face coming out of the closet, and the hallway just completely continuing to expand. Like that felt like a nightmare. It's like, oh, it's running down the hall in this nightmare, but the hallway just kept stretching and I couldn't get to where I needed to go. That more than like the pool or the face ripping off scenes affected me, but I get why those two really fuck some people up.
Well, I mean, I think with the rip off face thing, it's just it comes out of nowhere. Like at no point in this movie do you have any pretext that you're going to get that type of gory type of film, but then you get this moment where he's just getting a piece of chicken, and then the chicken turns into maggots, and the steak starts to rupture meat goo everywhere. And then, he's freaked out by it, goes into a sink and finds that, as he's splashing his face with water, that suddenly a wound pops up. And the whole time I'm thinking this, I'm like, why would you start tearing at it? Don't tear at a wound that just pops up on your face. Yeah. He just starts tearing at it, and that's when it rips off. So, like, for me, it just kind of comes out of nowhere and just kind of reinforces that, hey, these ghosts aren't nice. And you should be scared of them. Like, the terror is real. They're not just happy-go-lucky ghosts. So, like, it's more of a reassurance. And then it also just kind of it serves as a nice point to then build us up to the subsequent terror we get when Steven tries to pull the rope and we see the giant like skull monster thing that pops out, and subsequent other scares through the rest of the movie. Yeah. But, yeah, good point there. So let's go to review number 3 of Poltergeist. Poltergeist is a movie about real mom shit. Stepping on toys that you ask your kids to pick up and put away 100 times. Cradling your son and telling him everything is going to be okay on a sofa in the dead of night. Following your daughter into an unknown hell to save her from the bad influences of ghosts. Just everyday mom shit. Yep. I feel you.
Well,
I know it's dad.
I've never been a mom.
You've never been a mom, but let me tell you something. I got kids. The struggle is real. Okay. You're stepping on shit that you've told the kids to pick up 1,000 times. You're getting up in the middle of the night because they had a bad dream, and then you have to sit with them for 4 hours until they fall asleep, and then you got to get up the next day to go do work and get them to school. Yeah, it's a real struggle. I've never yet to go into hell, though, to try to rescue my daughter. I'm trying to avoid that one. But yes, I agree with this reviewer. It is some real mom shit. And, love your moms out there. They go through a lot.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to our last review of Poltergeist. Normalizing stubborn parents who smoke weed when the kids are asleep. Excuse me, suburban parents, not stubborn parents, suburban parents who smoke weed.
When I was a kid, like I was like, well, that's so weird. Parents don't smoke weed. And my father, who was way too forthcoming, said, yeah, I only smoked a handful of times in my life, son. It actually made sex so much better. And I'm like, Dad, I'm like 11. But yeah, and like my mom, she was very protective of that kind of stuff, because as a psychologist, she thinks like, oh, if I tell the truth, then I'm endorsing behavior. But she also didn't do it very often. But so I was like, my parents don't smoke weed, but yeah, boy, was I wrong about that. But yeah, I thought that was odd when I was a little kid and didn't know any better.
I was always just told by my parents, like, well, I tried it when I was in college. And yes, it made me really sleepy. That's it. I never heard like, oh, I smoked it at past college. Now, knowing what I probably know now, I can assume that was a lie. That,
yeah, sure.
Or the unlikely that was tried, after college. I don't know if it was tried while I was a kid. I don't know if it was tried. I don't know. There's worlds that parents exist in that are separate from your kids, and it's some purpose that's the way it is. But yeah, I think normalizing it is a good thing. I don't think you need to be out front your kids smoking a joint, but I do think like just saying like, hey, yeah, moms and dads sometimes need to relax. As long as it's not hurting anybody and not going behind the wheel of a car, it's okay.
Well, too, I think the biggest issue was for us when we were kids was the fact that it was illegal.
Yes, it was very illegal.
Like
and more not nearly as laxed as it is now, where quite literally you can go down to the equivalency of a CVS now and pick it up.
Like almost my entire life, my dad drank, and my mom started when I was in high school. And I think even they would absolutely tell me that, marijuana is better for you than alcohol, but it's illegal. That's why we don't want you getting involved with it, because you could get busted by the cops or whatever. But now I think now that it is legal, I don't see people probably.
Well, it depends on where you're at, John. Keep in mind that. In Pennsylvania, it is still one of those things where you have to have a medical card to be able to use it. And it's not like, go in Colorado or anywhere else we can just get it just like you would get a 6-pack of beer. It's not like that, at least in Pennsylvania.
It varies. Yeah.
For now. I say for now because let's be honest here, in 10 years, we're probably going to be just like, everywhere else where it's not really a big deal, because it isn't.
But it would be interesting to see people watching this movie, of Gen ZZ, the next one coming in. Yeah. I don't know where you go after Gen Z1.
Oh, no. After that, it's Gen Alpha.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Gen Alpha will probably not even think twice of seeing the parents smoking a doobie. They'll probably be like, why are they hiding it when the kid came in? But
yeah. That's all our reviews I got. Now, let's talk about the sequels.
Oh, my fucking God. Brian, can I start this off here?
Yes, you can absolutely start this off, John.
So I don't even know if Wikipedia meant to do this on purpose, but they low-key shit on this movie, and I was so happy about it because I was just preparing for my notes because I originally watched these in prep for the Erie Horror Fest. We didn't end up doing it at the fest. So it's now it's been 3 or 4 weeks since I've seen these movies. So I'm I better make sure I'm remembering the finer details of these. So I get into the first movie, Legacy. And there's a thing, sequel and remakes. And here's how they have it listed. In 1986, Poltergeist 2, The Other Side, retained the family, but introduced a new motive for the beast's behavior, tying him to an evil cult leader named Henry Kane, who led a religious sect to their doom in the 1820s. As the beast, Kane went to extraordinary lengths to keep his flock under control, even in death. The original motive of the cemetery's souls disturbed by the housing development was therefore altered. The cemetery was now explained to be built above a cave where Kane and his flock met their ends. It also reveals that the women of the family are actually psychics. And I can't help but feel that there's not delicious passive aggressiveness of that one paragraph written, basically saying this movie shits all over the original.
Yeah. I mean, I like the second one a hell of a lot more than the third one, but it kind of turns what was a very deep horror movie that had multiple layers.
Story.
That was yes, it was an allegorical story for capitalism, American colonialism, all of that. Our entire collective history as Americans, and kind of just turns it into an everyday dime store horror movie. And the only thing I can guess is that the producers of Poltergeist 2 were like, well, it's 1986. What are the monsters that are selling? Freddy, Jason. This is 86, so we haven't yet hit the Pinhead era. But so there's personalities. Okay, there's a monster at the center, and how do we compete with them? It can't just be an allegory about American greed. So what do? Well, we talked about the beast, so why don't we have the beast give him a name? Now, to be fair to this movie, I think that Julian Beck, who plays Kane, is fucking terrifying.
Oh, he did a great job with what he was given. Yeah. My problem is another wrestling term, they always say, I'm not shitting on the wrestler, I'm shitting on the creative that they're given.
Yeah.
What they're told to go out and say and do. Like Julian Beck, it was not his fault that the writing of the script was bad. He went out and fucking gave it his everything, and he nailed
While he
it.
was dying of cancer.
Yes, yeah. Guy
While
had
he was dying,
stomach cancer.
man was dying of cancer, and he
Yeah.
decided to make this his swan song. Like he was dying of cancer. Like you look at this man, you're like, this man must have had makeup on. No, that's him dying of cancer.
It is kind of messed up that they're like, yeah, you're skin and bones, like you're kind of frightening looking. It's like, yeah, but he has cancer though. But
Yeah, it's really terrifying. So no, I think he does an amazing job in this movie of being that personification of evil. When he's on screen, he is frightening. But I do think that it, kind of takes away from the original.
absolutely,
Even though he does bring that terror to it.
I call it the Ramboing, and what I mean by that,
Ramboing.
like if you watch the first Rambo movie, which called First Blood, if you watch that movie, it is actually a message on how fucked up, the war had made, returning Vietnamese soldiers and how terrible they were treated when they were drafted. They didn't choose this life. They were drafted, and how they were shit upon and didn't have a place when they came back. There's actually a lot of thoughtful, progressive layers to it. But then, First Blood Part 2 and then Rambo 3, because the titles of these things, they're really just products for the military industrial complex to recruit soldiers into the army. They absolutely just shit on the original message of the first film and did the complete 180 and just made them look how cool Sly Stallone is with a machine gun. Do you want to have a machine gun too? Well, then help us with our fight in the Middle East.
Yeah. One thing I'll give this movie credit for, Poltergeist 2, is that it's got a lot more body horror and not in a CGI, but just really awesome practical effects and just gore. Like there's a scene where Craig T. Nelson becomes possessed by Cain and like starts like blaming Joe Beth Williams, saying you wanted to get rid of Carol Ann, like all this horrible stuff, and Carol Ann's hearing all this shit, and then he spits up. Granted, he got possessed because he drank alcohol.
Yeah, don't eat the worm.
That he drank tequila that had a cane worm in it. I'm not making this up.
It's so funny. In the first one, I'm like, that doesn't sound stupid at all. But then when we get to this one, I'm like, that's stupid.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid. But yeah, then he spits up a quadriplegic. They actually hired a real quadriplegic to be in that suit. And he's credited on IMDb as the vomit creature.
Yeah.
It's so gross, but it's very much a body horror thing, and that's the thing. I mean, Robbie, Oliver Robbins, he comes back in and he gets like cocooned by his braces.
Yeah.
And it's almost like they took the parts about Poltergeist, like the tree eating Robbie, and we're like, let's just do more of that.
Yeah, it's Home Alone 2, right? Like, let's make it absolute Looney Tunes now.
Yeah, which there's nothing wrong with Home Alone 2. I like Home Alone 2, but it's not Home Alone 1.
Well, they're both junk, so I just put them in the categories both junk. Very holiday fun junk food. But yeah, this movie really at its core, they thought, okay, if we can get the original cast back, and we'll say Dominique Dunne's character's at college because of a horrific tragedy. We can get the original cast back, though. We can get, Zelda Rubinstein back. Then that's all people are going to want. And then we can just, do everything again, just not as good, but ratchet to 11. I'm sorry, but when you take Spielberg and Tobe Hooper and that original inspiration away, it's not going to work. I mean, yes, having the same cast, great. But it wouldn't have mattered if Michael Keaton was in Batman Forever. It was still a Joel Schumacher production.
Exactly. And there's not enough Julian Becks and Will Sampson, which I got to say, I liked Will Sampson in this, who played Taylor, the Native American landscaping person that somehow was also a witch doctor.
which I kind of hate
Okay.
his character because his existence almost feels like to give an out not only to the family but then us surrogately as like white people in the grand scheme of things from the first
Oh, you mean
movie.
when he has this like powwow with Craig T. Nelson? And he's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you power so you can save your family. And it's like, did you not see the first movie, Taylor?
Yeah.
Did you not see the first movie? Did you
Yeah.
not get what this movie was really about? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Manifest Destiny. Does that sound familiar? Because it sounds familiar to me. Like, I got it. Did you not? But I mean, he's great in it. I mean, nothing against them. They're great actors, but it's a script that is kind of lacking on the depth, more or less.
And I think that the only reason that it's not shit on more is that, again, Brian, a lot of the stuff we talked about, I think it went over a lot of people's heads. Like sometimes, and I'm not even saying anything about people. Sometimes people just want to go to the movie and they don't want to think more complexly. They just want to watch a family haunted by some ghosts, and then they want to go home and just forget about it. That's fine if that's how you ingest movies. But I do think for those that took in what the movie was really saying, this one almost seemed like it was trying to give Whitey the out. And that was gross to me. On top of the fact, that had no charm, no style, not offered nothing new. At the end when they're flying, I didn't laughing my ass off.
I was
yeah.
John, I that part I'm just like, why? And then the grandmother saves them. Yeah,
well, because all the women are psychics now.
Yeah. I got it. We have to have some explanation of why Carol Ann was affected by this. You know, because
it's that problem when you don't have a world, because there was never probably intended to be a sequel for this. It's like when Back to the Future, they're like, hey, we wanted you to make a sequel. It's like, oh, but the ending, what do we do with that ending? It was a joke. It's kind of a throwaway joke. We didn't think we were going to make another one. And they're like, well, work around it. And a lot of times these sequels come around and they have to add a new layer that wasn't there before. And it just kind of like, wait a minute, what? Because there was no world building planned. It reminds me in Return of the Skywalker or Revenge of the Skywalker. My Name is Skywalker, whatever the last one was. Hello, my name is Skywalker, where they're like, oh, I can use some of my force power. I can get out some of my force to heal people. It's like, what? Since when? What? On this one, it's like, oh, all the women are psychic. It's like, I don't remember any of that from the first movie. They went, yeah, hey, shut up.
I just, what I always think about? I'm like, so let me get this straight. Not to go on a tangent here, but if the force gives you the ability to heal yourself, then why the fuck couldn't Luke just regrow his severed hand?
Mm-hmm.
I'm just making a point there.
Yeah.
The man was the last Skywalker at that point. You're telling me he couldn't regrow his hand? Why do you have to have a cybernetic one? Just regrow a new one. You've got force abilities. Oh, that's right. It's all bullshit. So I don't want to talk too much more about Poltergeist 2 because we got Poltergeist 3.
What the hell is there to say?
Oh, Brian? As a kid, I liked this movie. Truth be told, I didn't know any better. But upon rewatching it, I gotta tell you, it's so fucking boring. It's just so fucking boring.
They tried to do that thing where it's like, okay, take what worked before, but now put it in a completely different location. Like this to me, Babe 2, Pig in the City. This should have been like Poltergeist 3, Carol Ann in the city. What if it's Poltergeist but in a skyscraper? Whoa! It's like I don't want that. No, thank you. This isn't what I ordered.
No, we don't. This is the Temu version of Poltergeist. Oh, sometimes you get lucky on Temu. You get some good things. No, this one was really bad. And it's the whole idea that, well, that you could exactly as you said, like you could take what worked and throw it somewhere else, and yes, it will work. And you can be completely devoid of what actually made the original good. Like at least in the second one, you kept the original characters for the most part, barring tragedies. You kept the original characters. You kept some of the mythos there. There's a line of continuity. Yes, it's a little bit goofy, but it's still there. In this one, it's fucking out the window. We don't even focus on Carol Ann half the time. We don't even focus on it. We focus on all these other characters I don't give two shits about.
It's almost like they somehow thought the building was the main character.
Yeah, the building's a main character. It's never explained why the building is possessed. It's never explained. It's oh, the mirrors, man, the mirrors. Now, don't get me wrong. One thing I will give this movie some credit to is the ability to do practical effects with mirrors. Shooting practical effects with mirrors.
Yeah, Orson Welles already did it.
John, I'll give them credit.
Mm-hmm.
That's tough shit. Okay.
Yeah.
There are some mirror shots in this that are pretty good.
Having to keep the lights and the camera out of the shot. Yeah. And
not just that, but
donuts.
Not just that, but just like where you've got like characters. They did a lot of things with doubles in this. Okay. Where you had like doubles in one scene, one side of the frame, and then the real people in the other. So you had like that other one. That stuff is cool. Okay. I'll give you credit for that. But technical merit alone is not going to save a shit story and shit acting.
What story?
Well, there is no story. I can't even necessarily tell you what happens other than, well, Carol Ann gets sucked into the mirror world. Okay.
Because apparently Kane now,
Kane is someone in a Kane mask, because let's be honest, there's a guy in a Kane mask.
Right. Apparently now he can just keep haunting her wherever she goes.
Yeah.
So now is he Freddy now?
Well, yeah, this is the complete Fredification of this that's a new word I've come up with. Fredification. The Fredification of Poltergeist. He's become Freddy. But yeah, like it's never really explained why he's only attracted to her, and he's been searching for her, and he found her in Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why? Okay, but why?
Yeah. Why?
Because she's the lead actress?
Yeah. That's it. And Tom Skerritt, doing his best Tom Skerritt impression. And Nancy Allen not playing RoboCop's partner.
I'd say Tom Skerritt, or as we all know him, that guy. You know.
That guy. Because he was the early 90s dad in just about everything. You know, he was that guy. You saw his face, like, oh, Dad, Tom Skerritt. I've seen him and stuff. Yeah,
it's when you describe it. It's like, oh, and the dad was like, oh, I can't remember his name, but you've seen him in like everything.
You've seen his face.
Yeah,
I know his face. Yeah. He's that dad who's old, but not too fucking old.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
just right.
Just
orange.
Right. he's DILF territory, as they say. Yeah, but Nancy Allen is not RoboCop's partner, and let's be honest here: if Nancy Allen was playing RoboCop's partner in this movie, Kane would be dead.
Mm-hmm. Well, unless
can you imagine that if she just turned into her RoboCop's partner territory, just was like, "Yes, I'm Lewis now."
Well, unless Kane asked if he could zip this up, and then he would
gross. But yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about this movie, because most of the focus is on actually Laura Flynn Boyle and whoever Kipley Wentz is his name in IMDb, who's like, I guess, the boyfriend. But yeah, it's mostly focusing on them, because they get turned into like mirror duplicates. Like this thing has a lot of whole deals with possession. Like the main thing that they got out of Poltergeist 2 was like, well, let's just possess everybody. and have mirror copies and doppelgangers. And that's the whole thing.
Let's just do whatever we want, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I have a feeling, I don't have any proof of this. And I'm sure if I did enough digging, I could find out. But this seems like 2 or 3 other movies combined into one script, and they said, let's make this a Poltergeist movie. Let's put Poltergeist in the title, and we'll rework everything to make it a quote unquote Poltergeist movie, because it just seems like they just have veered so far away from the original source material.
Yeah, and I guess the thing too is, like, if we go back to the original, which is you know, the American dream reaping what it sowed, you know, and now we're in a somewhat futuristic high-rise capitalism giant monolith, and that's where this shit's gonna happen. Like, it almost reminded me a little bit of the Clamp building in Gremlins 2.
Yeah, but see, but Brent, I don't think that they're smart enough that that's actually even a commentary on anything. I just think they thought,
oh, well, I'm saying it failed at that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If they were trying to do that, they failed at it.
Yeah, like, well, wouldn't the visuals be cool in a giant building? That's the only reason that they did it. So I think that's the one and only reason. Hope nobody can hear my dog playing with
That's
a
okay.
squeaky toy.
Everyone knows John's has a dog.
But yeah, it's not a commentary or anything. It's just like, we have this location. It'll look neato. Let's just shoot there, because nobody on this project has any desire or any ambition. Because you can tell when a movie is made with no soul, because I watched this movie in preparation for this episode, and then I'm like, well, I should probably just watch some like internet recaps or something, just in case, like, just to refresh myself. And then I read like the IMDb plot summary, and even doing all of those things over and over again, I've forgotten like half of this movie. And while that's a bad sign, I'll say, is because I think most people would agree, of like the original lot of Child's Play movies, the third one's the worst. You know, it's a debatable thing, but I can still tell you everything that happened in Child's Play 3, but I forget at least 40% of what happened in Poltergeist 3.
Truth be told, John, I was nodding off while I was watching this. Okay, and that is not to say because it was a long day or anything. I was just nodding off because this movie is fucking boring, and it had so many weird things. You had a therapist in there who's like trying to disprove all this shit. I'm like, this girl's got 2 movies full of crap. You can't look up Cuesta Verde. You can't look up the fact her house doesn't exist anymore. What are you going to chalk that up to? Or what about the second incident that occurred? Like, you can't. Yeah. So like it all fits with a paradigm that we'd seen in movies that came out at this time period. 1988 was when this movie came out. 88 was also when Child's Play came out, you know, and that was the whole idea of, oh, well, let's just have a therapist like try to psychoanalyze a child and disprove all this shit. So it's a common trope, you know, is what I'm trying to get across. But it's so boring. It doesn't offer anything. There's no really scares in it, you know?
Right.
And it's sad because this was Heather O'Rourke's last movie, because she was also dealing with medical issues at the time. And this is another movie where people have been like, oh, see, the poltergeist curse. It's like, no, dude, like, that's a child who's dealing with a medical issue that, you know, unfortunately ended their life.
Yeah.
Just misdiagnosed and ultimately ended their life. So it's sad.
Yeah, it's, you know, I think we might have brought it up on the show, or Brian, I don't know if I just talked to you directly, but there's a movie out right now that I very much hate, but it was shot here in Pittsburgh, called Deliverance, that deals with domestic violence, mental illness, not postpartum depression, but just like PTSD, and how it's all wrapped up in this delusion that it's based on like demons and things like that. And I am getting tired of that shit. I'm getting tired of these movies dealing with real issues, but basing them on just nonsense, because people can't deal with actual true tragedies and they don't know anything about analysis of things. So, Yeah, I'm getting a little tired of, oh, she died because of the poltergeist curse. No, she died because while we have great advancement in Western medicine, a lot of times these guys are just complete and total guessers in white coats. Like every 10 years we realize how little we did know. And then another 10 years goes by and how little we did know then. It's kind of shocking and very upsetting. And it's easy for somebody to get misdiagnosed, especially when they're young and female.
Yeah. Yeah. No. But yeah, Poltergeist 3 kind of is a terrible movie. Watch it if you want to be a completionist.
Yeah.
But it's just fucking boring. It's not even an awesomely bad one. Although there are some funny moments. I do find it hilarious and annoying at the same time that Laura Flynn Boyle and a number of characters end up repeating the name of other characters 3 or 4 times in a row. Like Laura Flynn Boyle, after she's found after being pulled into like a pool that randomly is there, she comes back and she's like, "Where's Carolyn? Carolyn? Carolyn?" It says it like 3 times. Like she's on repeat, like a record skip. And I think Pat does the same thing where she's saying, "Bruce, Bruce, Bruce, Bruce," like over and over again. And I think even Scotty says the same sort of thing where he's like, "Where's Donna? Where's Donna?" So like there's really bad acting in this that if you watch this movie as like a trash a movie night type deal, you might find those moments to be funny.
Oh yeah, I do think this is one of those like get 10 of your friends, pot and beer.
Yeah,
you're gonna
and
have
we say that a lot. We say that,
yeah.
You can have a poltergeist night. You have your pot and you're reading Ronald Reagan.
As you do.
But no, it is definitely more on the bad side than the awesomely bad part. But there are some of those moments that are there. But John, now I'll be the first to say I did not watch the remake.
I watched it for you.
John watched it for me. So John, comparing what we had already just talked about, is the remake as bad as I imagine? Go.
If it was just a standalone movie, if it had not been a remake, Poltergeist never existed, I would say that it is just a subpar movie that's not bad. It's just a C- movie that I would never watch again. But I don't know how there are people out there, if they do exist, who can watch a remake of something and not somehow compare it to the original. And what this movie did was take the haunted house elements and take out every single meaning, nuance, and subtext of the original film and throw it in the wastebasket. It's just a haunted house ghost movie. It's like the RoboCop remake or the Total Recall remake. They took everything that was unique or had anything to say about the original and they threw it in the garbage can. And all we got was the surface level. Again, as I said with the Die Hard thing, it would be like if you remade Die Hard, but they were actually terrorists and they weren't there to actually steal anything.
Why do you think they do that all the time?
I mean, I guess they felt that they had to separate it enough from the original to give it a reason for existing. Like it reminds me of like on the other end, the Psycho Gus Van Sant movie where it's like shot by shot. Like why bother? The original movie is already so good. Why do it again shot for shot, scene by scene, if it's not offering anything new? But a lot of the time the problem is what makes these movies unique is their lightning in a bottle. And if you take that away, it's not worth the time. And I know that the people who are greenlighting these remakes are exec. We own the name. It's a profitable name. Who gives a shit? Let's just hope it makes its money back. But it's like when you remove the one thing that's unique and powerful about Poltergeist, separating it from any other haunted house movie, you take away the life force of it. But I just don't think they really cared. I thought they said, well, let's cash in on the Poltergeist name. It's one of the ones in our catalog that we have the name of.
I mean, I think there's truth to that. I think, and I've seen this with other remakes too, like Nightmare on Elm Street was one that I still, to this day, loathe entirely. The Texas
There was no
Chainsaw
way they could win.
Well, I know there's no way they could win, but like it's just loathe entirely. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 1 is another one that I don't hate it as much, but it does kind of remove, as you said, a lot of the subtext. And I think it is something where I honestly think that the producers of these movies, the people who greenlit, think the audience is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I really believe that. I really believe that they don't respect the horror genre. They don't respect the storytelling that can happen in this type of genre. And they really only want a product that delivers gore, nudity if it's necessary, and shock. But they don't want subtext. They don't want original. They don't want anything because that might cause the audience to think. And they don't have an opinion of the audience that is high enough to warrant them to think that they can think.
And that's why the bourgeoisie stick their nose up at horror. It's the type of movie that can be made if you don't care so cheaply, and it can be an assembly line. I think that there are so many terrible, just get it out there, who cares if there's no heart and soul into it, that absolutely puts a black eye on actual horror that tries to make a difference for film.
Yeah. I that's why I always go with, if I want to really enjoy a horror genre, I'm not going to go to any studio that purports to tell me, oh yes, this is the scariest movie of all fucking time, or anything like that. I don't buy it. I'm being sold a bill of goods, because unfortunately, like majority of us who are horror film fans, we very much can think, Yeah. And I think that's why you are seeing movies like The Substance becoming popular, because that's a horror movie that does force you to think. And it's kind of, and I even give, here's the thing, I will even, as I know you didn't like Terrifier 3, but Terrifier 3, it's can't say it isn't made for the horror fan. You can't say
Sure.
It isn't made for them.
Well, yeah, and there are there are very much two types of horror movies. I think of I saw the TV Glow came out this year, in Substance. One of them is very nuanced, quiet, makes you think, and the other absolutely hits you over the head. And neither is right or wrong. They're just two different approaches. They're just two different ways to make the same soup. So,
right. But they still they treat the medium with respect.
Yeah.
Say what you will about Terrifier 2, Terrifier 3. It treats the medium with respect, and it treats the fan with respect, and doesn't play down to them. It gives them what they want. At least that section of that fandom wants. I'm not saying every horror film fan is a gore hound. I'm just saying that for those of us who maybe are tired of digital blood and tired of CGI and tired of things that aren't practical. Like, I love the practical elements in Poltergeist. Okay. I love that shit, even if it doesn't look 100% real. Okay. And there's a section of the horror fandom that loves that and wants that and yearns for those days. We love hearing about the K&B effects guys. We love hearing about, Dick Smith. We love hearing about Tom Savini. We love that practical stuff. So when we get to see it on screen, then we're there for it, because we respect that. And the filmmaker, Damien Leone, respects that. And other horror filmmakers who are taking an attitude of, we're respecting our fan base and we're respect them enough to give them fucking stories that they can think about, that we can tackle complex issues through this wrapper called horror. That's where we need to get to. We're starting to get there. I think we said, John, what was it last year, that 2022 or 2023 was like one of the best years of horror?
Mm-hmm.
I think there's truth to that. I think we're on our way there. But it's a slow moving train. Poltergeist, the remake, when did that come out? That came out in 2015.
15 or 16.
Yeah, 2015.
Around that area. Yeah.
I mean, this was one of those ones that was, I think, the second or third generation of remaking, cherished childhood horror movies. And I'm not seeing nearly as many of those anymore.
Yeah, it's a pocket of things. It's like when Chapter 1 did real well. They're like, oh, let's remake all the Stephen King movies, like Pet Cemetery and all that.
Yeah.
And as quickly as it starts, as quickly as it fades, as soon as one of them doesn't make any money. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's exactly it. But yeah, no, I think the legacy of Poltergeist really resides in that first movie, and really resides in the idea that horror can be political and can very much be more than just the surface level of a ghost story, that it can kind of speak to deeper things that are still very, very fucking relevant in this day and age. Mm-hmm. And you can enjoy it on multiple levels too. Clearly John and I have a political perspective that aligns with some of those other levels. But that isn't to say that you can't still enjoy Poltergeist as a ghost story. I think that's very well. That's fine. No one's going to criticize you, and I would never criticize anyone. It's like, you know what? I get that stuff is there. I really just want to enjoy it for what it is. That's okay.
Well, Brian, I don't think that we're, it's not that we're sitting here just making things up to fit our political ideology. We gave examples of what we felt the filmmakers were trying to get across. It would be something if we just went, well, Carol Ann is a symbol of patriarchy. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, yeah, it fits my paradigm. Like we backed up every example that it's not just because it matches our political ideology. It's that the filmmakers presented it. And here's why.
True.
Yeah.
But all I'm trying to say, John, is that the beauty of this movie is that you can enjoy it on different levels. That you can just watch it as a straight up horror movie and still get enjoyment out of it. I don't think this movie is preaching to anyone. I think if you're receptive to those different layers, you'll get it. Mm-hmm. And that those different layers are built in. Okay? Upon rewatching this, I've seen this movie so many times. I didn't notice all of these different things until I just paid attention. I put my phone down, okay? And just watched the movie. And just was like, I never really noticed that before. And just started to see the amalgamation of all of these different things, these different threads that were all woven into this movie. And I came to that conclusion that this really isn't a movie just purely about spooky specters in the closet. Okay? If it was just that, no one will be still talking about it, over 30, almost over 40 years ago. Okay?
Yeah.
So, but we're talking about it because there's something more to it. Okay? And the reason why Poltergeist 2, 3, and the remake aren't talked about nearly as much is because they lack that. They lack those elements.
Yeah, and if all of you listening out there, you think, wow, Brian and John, they talked forever about Poltergeist, but just kind of breeze to the other ones. It's because there isn't a whole lot there, and we presented everything that there was to talk about. Where if you go back in our back catalog and you listen to our are Halloween or Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm not saying that all of the sequels in those movies are good. I'm not at all. But there was a lot to talk about. So
Shut
you
up,
know.
John. They're all good.
Well, you won't say that about Halloween.
The Nightmare. No, I won't. I'll say about Nightmare ones.
Yeah.
I find redeeming elements in just about every one, even Freddy versus Jason. In all night, there's some. Okay, it's all I have to say is this: Robert Englund's in it. That's the redeeming quality of Freddy versus Jason.
Yeah.
It's that Robert Englund's in it, and it's not what's his face, Jackie Earle Haley. So yeah, there's redeeming qualities in just about all of the original Nightmare on Elm Street movies. Jason ones, and well, we didn't do Jason ones yet. Oh
yeah.
no, we can't. I don't want to do that one. That's gonna be like a 3-parter, John.
See, Brian, like every Friday the 13th, I watch like the next one in the sequence, so I could be your spiritual guru and just kind of like remind you what happened. You'd be like, oh, that was that one.
It's like, is this the one Feldman's in? No, that's
was
the
3
final
and 4.
chapter.
Yeah,
it's 3 and 4. Oh, okay. It's like the
or no,
Fast and the Furious
4 and
ones.
5. 4 and 5.
Oh, excuse me. See, I don't even know. I don't know. Jason's like my least favorite movie monster, to be perfectly honest with everybody. But John, your final thoughts kind of on the legacy of Poltergeist.
People have heard me say this on this podcast a lot, and I don't say it to try to sound like a Mr. Smarty Pants. Like I learned a cool quote and I just use it all the time. It's because it is true. And as the idea, the film is not a reflection of reality, but rather the reality of reflection. And, you know, long story long here, history is written by the winners, but that doesn't mean that what's written is true. And I think that this film franchise is a reflection of the subversion of the first film, of the reality that you are living in, even if it's just through pure ignorance, is not the reality of how you got here in terms of the characters in the movie, that there is more to the history than is presented, because again, it's written by the winners. Where I think that this quote unquote franchise absolutely fell apart and destroyed itself was that the winners wanted to come back and take it back in the second and the third, and then the remake having no soul whatsoever. Is that they said, no, the winners are going to write this story. We're not going to let this weird film about the dark underlying of our American history pervert our winners' outlook on things. You know, you see this through a lot of movies, as I mentioned, First Blood, and then the First Blood Part 2, Rambo, and Rambo 3. Those two movies have nothing to do with the first one. And I guess, as old Harvey Dent said, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
Nice Batman reference. Very nice.
Yeah.
Well, this episode is about over 2 hours long. I'm surprised by that.
Well, yeah, everybody just listen to this one at work, or you should almost put this disclaimer at the beginning. This is a long one. You can listen to it in chunks, do a half an hour here, 45 minutes.
This might take you a while. But I just want to say to everyone who is still listening, have a happy and safe Halloween. Check your candy, have fun. It's fun time. I hope you're all having safe and happy Halloween. And with it said, John, where can they find you at on the internets?
Let's see. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. And thankfully, because October 31st is my deadline, by the time you guys are listening to this, most likely my So Many Questions Halloween H2O will be hitting the airwaves. And by airwaves, I actually mean the internets, over on YouTube at JDubs Video Nasties.
Nice. Well, if you have enjoyed this episode and you want to help us out, do me a favor. Share this episode out with your friends and family. Obviously with people who might either welcome the message that we are talking about here with Poltergeist, or, maybe don't want that. But either way, share it with your friends and family, because that really does help out the podcast. Outside of that, you can help us out a ton by going to cinemapsychoshow.com/follow. and following our podcast on your favorite podcast app. If you go to that website, we've got all the links there. Just click one and boom, whatever podcast app you've got, you'll be able to listen to us and follow us. You never miss an episode. Now, if you're watching us here on YouTube, hey, thank you so much. Seriously. Do me a favor, though. Right there on the bottom, though, okay, the bottom there, hit that subscribe button, hit that follow button, hit that bell button, because that right there tells the YouTube algorithm that you want more and more of this content, okay? I can't do it for us, so you got to tell them, hey, I want more of the Cinema Psycho Show by subscribing, by following, by clicking the bell, by writing us a little comment down below saying, hey, I like your episode. That helps us out a ton. And with that said, we will see you next time.
No matter how good of a neighborhood you live in, make sure you check all of your kids' Halloween candy for Tom Atkins' ass.